welcome to Talking DV, a podcast that focuses on domestic violence and practical guidance on how to leave a relationship where your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, or whoever might be harming you. My name is Dean Hinton. I'm a licensed attorney in the state of Tennessee. For almost a decade, I've handled cases involving people whose partners have been physically, emotionally, and financially abusive to them. By providing practical guidance to you, my guest and I will hopefully help you escape harmful relationships. I'm speaking today with Stacy Scruggs, who's the administrator for the Safe at Home program here in Tennessee. Welcome to the show. Very grateful for you being very grateful for you being here. Stacy, what is the Safe at Home program?
The Safe at Home Address Confidentiality Program with the state of Tennessee is a program that was specifically passed by the Tennessee State Legislature to provide address confidentiality for those who are victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and stalking. In doing so, this allows victims to be able to keep their home addresses from showing up in state and local government records where that information could be used to find their location.
How long has it been around?
Safe at Home passed the 2018 legislative session. We actively started taking participants in March of 2019. Shortly before COVID hit. So we've been up and running about 7 years. A solid 3 years of that was under the veil of COVID. So it's been a little challenging to get the word out about the program.
And you've been the administrator since then, since inception.
Yes, I've been the only one who's ever run this program in the state of Tennessee. So it's been a wonderful experience for me to be able to step in and do so.
My understanding, when you say only one, my understanding is you are the Safe at Home person. You're sort of like a one-person shop.
That is correct. Yeah, I cover all 95 counties for the state of Tennessee. So if you're in Shelby County or in Sullivan County, I'm the person who's going to be processing your application.
Are other states doing similar programs?
There are about 40 other states that have address confidentiality programs. There is an organization called NACAP. It's the National Association of Confidential Address Programs that are my counterparts across the country. Laws do vary wildly from state to state, though, depending on what their specific statute says. As of right now, every state that touches Tennessee, with the exception of Alabama, does have an ACP program. Georgia recently passed their program, but it is not up and running yet.
You touched on this already. Who is the Safe at Home program for?
So we are specifically serving victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and stalking. I want to say here, though, that those are not just intimate partner relationships. We cover parent-child abuse, elder abuse, disability abuse, professional abuse, because when you think about these categories, anybody can stalk you. It doesn't have to be somebody you know. Same thing for domestic violence. That could technically cover a roommate, just depending on what the specific situation is. But within the statute, those are the 4 offenses that are listed.
In other episodes of this podcast, we have other guests and I have talked about the different categories that you just named, the stalking, the abuse, and so forth. But if you're talking maybe conversationally to someone and they may not identify, I don't even know if I'm being stalked. I'm not necessarily even talking about the legal definition, maybe just abuse. What is that? Is there a way to sort of break that down a little bit about who is in your program?
Yeah, well,
what's happened to them?
We hear a lot of communication from victims that you have to be listening for that specific language that they're using. They're not going to say, I need address confidentiality. They're going to use language like, I'm concerned about somebody finding me. I'm concerned about my home address being in this record. I'm concerned about somebody knowing where I am. That's the kind of language I hear. And then at that point, that's when we're stepping in and saying, oh, well, you need address confidentiality is what you need. We're seeing everything from domestic violence victims who are actively living in DV shelters to people who are homeowners that have been dealing with stalking issues. We see the entire gamut. As of right now, I've probably got about 1,200 active participants in the program across the state, and we see everything.
I'm guessing, based on no research or any information whatsoever, that maybe a good percentage of these 1,200 people have been told at some point by their other person that they're trying to stay safe from, that things like, I'm going to hurt you, I'm going to kill you, you can't ever leave me, these kinds of things? Or is that not even the case?
So yeah, no, that's definitely a realistic scenario where people are legitimately concerned that their life is in danger. But then there are also stalking issues where people are just being harassed, and it may not necessarily be a life-threatening issue, but people are being stalked. When you look at someone, maybe potentially a high-profile individual, a media figure or something like that, And we do have high-profile individuals in the program who get threatening letters and those sorts of things, and they don't want their home address being a matter of public record where somebody can just show up at their house. But then, like I said, we also have people who are actively going through a divorce, who are being threatened by their ex-spouses, people who are dealing with custody issues, and they're wanting to keep their children safe. So there's a broad range of what these victims are dealing with. We also deal with professionals who are dealing with stalking issues. I spoke with someone not too long ago who's a counselor, and she doesn't want her clients to know where she lives because she had been receiving some concerning statements regarding her home residence. So we look at each individual case and see what that specific person is dealing with and which one of these categories they're going to fit into. And then within our statute, there are specific things that they can provide to prove that they are falling into one of these categories.
Who is this program not for? Who might apply and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, this isn't right for you"? Or maybe that doesn't happen.
Yeah, typically when we get an application for the Safe at Home program, the majority of our applications come in through one of our partnering agencies who is providing a service for someone who is already reaching out regarding a specific domestic violence incident. They've already filed for an order of protection. They are actively in shelter. We're not hearing from a lot of people who hear about the program and are just thinking, yeah, I would like for my address to not be a matter of public record. If I get somebody like that, I'm typically just going to say, okay, well, what are your specific concerns? Is there a specific person you're concerned about? This program is not designed to just be kind of a blanket catch-all for anyone who might be concerned about their address. We're looking for more specific instances of where somebody is actually being threatened and have substantiation where they can provide us information to prove that.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is there's a vetting process.
There
perhaps.
is, yeah.
Because you can't just run up to Stacy Scruggs and say, "Hey, please put me in the program." There's an application assistant.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that in just a minute. But by the time it gets to you, somebody who you trust and who's been trained in the program has told you this person is probably a very good candidate for this program.
Yeah. Or they're calling me and saying, hey, I'm working with someone. Let me tell you what's going on with them, and you can tell me if they're a good candidate for this program before we send in their application. The first question I'm asking myself is, where are they? Where are they physically located? Because I want to make sure that the address that they are at is an address that I can actually protect. If they're at an address that has been associated with their name in public records, I can't go back and redact that information. Safe at Home is not retroactive in any way. So what I'm looking at is, okay, have you moved within the last 30 days? Are you going to be moving to a new address? Are you at an address that you've never associated with your name in public records? Where are you? Once I've determined that they are at an address that we can actually protect, that falls within our statute, at that point, I'm then going to ask them, okay, what's going on with you as far as your victim status? Which one of these categories do you fall into, and how are you going to establish that for us? Within the Safe at Home statute, there are 3 very unique ways that somebody can qualify for Safe at Home. The first is a past or a present court case. So if I'm actively involved in the courts in any way regarding one of these offenses and I'm listed as the victim, that's going to qualify me. But also, if I was a victim of any of these offenses ever, that would qualify me as well. So if there was a guilty plea or conviction of one of these offenses 10 years ago, that qualifies me for Safe at Home because I was a victim of one of those crimes. If somebody has an active order of protection, that will qualify them for Safe at Home as well. But also, if you are working with a licensed professional regarding any of these offenses, any licensed professional can write a statement that just simply says, based on my knowledge of the circumstances, I believe that this person is a victim and I believe that this person is in danger, and that will qualify them for the program. We do know that there are a lot of victims who are dealing with these sorts of issues that don't rise to the level of getting law enforcement involved or having a court case, those sorts of things, but they are working with licensed professionals who are aware of what's going on with them that can make a statement on their behalf. So like I said, once I've determined where they are, I can protect that address. I'm then establishing if they are a victim for the purposes of this program. And then at that point, we're completing the application process.
You mentioned criminal charges. It's probably going to be something like domestic assault, aggravated assault, those kind of things. Some, a person-on-person contact or putting someone in fear, maybe pointing a gun at somebody, things like that.
Oh, yeah, there's all different kinds of things that could qualify for that. I have people in this program that are, waiting to testify in court regarding their attempted murder, so it can get that serious. But I also have people in this program, who are just receiving threats, that it hasn't risen to the level of a court case yet, but they are working with an attorney who's aware of what's going on, or working with a therapist or someone else who might be aware of what's going on with them.
When I asked you the question, who's this not for, some of the things that I came to my mind, just because maybe I've had to deal with this in the past, is things like someone who's avoiding a creditor, or someone who just wants to go off the grid and just disappear.
This program is not for them.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah, because when you go through the application process, Safe at Home is stating for the Tennessee State Legislature that we know where this person is. One of the things that I do as part of my role is I accept service of process on behalf of all of my participants. So if the court needs to serve someone, they're serving us, and then I'm serving that participant. Using Safe at Home to disappear is not an option, because I keep a very close tabs on all of my participants, where they are. Are they receiving their mail? Am I able to contact them? Are the courts able to communicate with them? If someone is not reachable, we can remove them from the program.
Yeah, and having done one of these with your help, with your guidance, I know there's a lot of people who acknowledge that there's certain restraints on them, certain limitations. And can you talk a little bit about those limitations? For example, my understanding, you mentioned the 30-day rule.
Yeah.
So someone has to have moved within 30 days, but without giving away too much. You were able to help me because you're so skilled at this, is that you were able to help me, even though the person had moved beyond 30 days, you were able to step in, ask a few questions, and ensure that this person was right for your program, and we were able to get that person in this program.
Well, because what the statute says is, I've moved within the last 30 days, but I'm at an address that I have not associated with my name in public records. So at that point, we're having that conversation with that victim to say, okay, how long have you been at your address? Who have you given it to? Who knows that you're there? If you have given your address to someone, was it an entity that was going to make it a matter of public record or not? So we're looking at those specific situations, because I think it was this past legislative session, we did add a third category that states, I attest I am at an address that is unknown to my offender, that has not been associated with my name in public records. So that gives us a little bit of leeway to look at their specific situation, because what I was hearing from victims is, I fled a domestic violence situation 7 months ago, and I've been sleeping on my cousin's couch. And I haven't used this address for anything. I haven't gotten a driver's license here. The only person I've given it to is my doctor. Well, that's covered under HIPAA. That's not a public record. So those are the kinds of things I'm looking for. And I can say, okay, well, we can go ahead and enroll you in the program, because the only people that have your address right now and that know where you are aren't going to give that information out if somebody asks for it. So we're looking at those specific situations to see if someone is going to qualify or not.
So I think, if I remember correctly, on the website, the Safe at Home website, it does say something about the 30-day rule, and I think I've been taught that as well. But that's not hard and fast, at least not anymore.
It is not anymore. So that 30-day rule, you've moved to an address unknown to your abuser that's not associated in your name with public records for more than 30 days. That more than 30 days deadline is in there, because if you've moved somewhere, you've got, you've purchased a home. You've registered that home for the purpose of property taxes. You've gotten your driver's license there, and you've registered to vote there, and you've registered your business under that address. You've already put your name all over that address in public records, and we can't go back and redact all of that information. So that's what I'm looking for specifically. Once a government record has been created and it's more than 30 days old, I can't go back and redact that information. So that's what I'm looking for, is how much have you given your address out to those who might make it a matter of public record.
Another limitation, as I understand it, is you cannot own real estate and be in this program.
Yes and no.
Okay,
yes and no.
okay.
So you can be a homeowner in the Safe at Home program, but when somebody gets into the Safe at Home program, the way that we are protecting them is we are issuing them a substitute address that they're using for all legal purposes. If you purchase a home as a Safe at Home participant and you give the trustee's office our substitute address for the purpose of property taxes, you're going to be paying property taxes on a government building, and you do not want to do that. So for that reason, if you wish to be a homeowner in the Safe at Home program, there are additional steps that you can take to protect your home ownership, such as purchasing your home in a trust or an LLC. There are other things that you can do to block from public records the fact that you own that property. So, for example, my home is in a trust. If you look for me in the county where I live, I don't show up anywhere because I don't own my home. My trust does.
And that trust is probably not the Stacy Scruggs trust.
It is not. It is some random name that I made up that nobody knows. Only my attorney knows what the name of my trust is. So if you go to the county database, the public database that has all of the homeowners and all of the addresses listed, I'm not going to show up anywhere. We have a lot of homeowners in this program who have taken that step to either do a trust or an LLC. There is also another law within the state of Tennessee. I don't know it right off the top of my head, but the trustee's office can communicate this. There is a piece of paper that you can sign with them to have your name and your property removed from the publicly searchable database on their website. Now, if I were to go in there and submit a public records request, I could potentially still be given your address, but I can't just Google it and look at it on their website. So that is another avenue as well. But you can be a homeowner. You just can't use our substitute address for the purpose of property taxes.
Are there any other limitations that potential applicants need to be aware of?
So when we're looking at limitations, we're looking at things like the Safe at Home program does not forward packages, those sorts of things. So if you want to order Amazon packages, you're going to do that, have those sent to an alternate location and have them sent to your house or to a friend's house or something, because we don't forward packages. It's simply a cost-saving measure to do that. So we do have some limitations as far as mail is concerned. We forward all first-class and certified mail to participants. That is not considered a package. Once it reaches a certain size, there are limitations to what we will send. So it's those sorts of limitations that we have to look at.
For example, when I order packages, I do have not because I'm trying to protect my identity or whatever, but my packages are sent to a CVS and I go pick them up, a CVS drugstore. So I assume that's an easy workaround.
Yeah, there's a lot of easy workarounds for that. I have participants that use prepaid visas and fake names to order their Amazon packages, and they just have them sent directly to their home.
How does the mail flow work for the program? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, when somebody gets into the program, we're going to issue them a substitute address that they're going to be using for all legal purposes. It is one address that is used statewide. When they get into the program, for example, if they go into Department of Motor Vehicles to get a new driver's license, they're going to provide our address for their driver's license. When that driver's license is mailed to them, it's going to come to the Safe at Home program. All of that mail is collected by the Safe at Home program, sorted, and then we then forward that mail to the participant at their confidential address, which we have. Only we know what their confidential address is, and our program is not subject to public records request. So that's how mail is moving through the program. That is one of the downfalls of being in the program, in that it can slow down mail a little bit because it's coming to us, and then we have to repackage it and forward it to you. But for the most part, over the last 7 years that I've been doing this, everything has been running very smoothly with the mail, and we've not had any complaints with participants not getting their mail in a timely manner.
One of the humorous things perhaps that I remember about my training in this program is that the mail actually goes to an armory.
It does.
And
yeah, it does. So we share the private mailroom with the Tennessee Department of Military for Safe at Home mail. It is a security feature that we've built in so that we don't have to worry about anybody having access to that information that belongs to our participants. And also the Department of Military, their mailroom only handles mail for them. So if a piece of mail were to get misdirected, it's only going to stay within that building. It's not going to go somewhere else. So it works very well having the Department of Military partner with us on this. And also, when a participant starts using the substitute address, at some point it becomes their outward-facing address on court records, on parenting plans, on everything. We have had offenders show up at the substitute address thinking that that's where their victim was. So using the Nashville Armory as the Safe at Home program mailing address provides multiple layers of security, not just for their mail, but for their physical being as well.
That was a humorous part to me,
Yeah.
that the abusers would show up to an armory looking for the survivor or whoever.
And they do. And that's one of the things that since Safe at Home has passed, and we've started taking away the resources that these offenders normally use to abuse their victims, like those public records, they're getting more creative and they're getting angry about it because they're used to just being able to Google somebody's address and go to their house. And they can't do that anymore when somebody's in the Safe at Home program. So we have to be mindful about that.
What about those people who might want to use this program, but they're skeptical of government? This is sort of a government thing, and that's too much bureaucracy or whatever for me.
Yeah, well, the Save at Home program is not at all what I would consider bureaucratic. We don't function like a normal government entity. Even though we are housed within the Secretary of State's office, the services that our Safe at Home participants receive are on a very personal level because we are touching their addresses, we're touching their mail, we're handling a lot of different services for them like voting and their school registration and all of those sorts of things, their driver's licenses. The Safe at Home program is very accessible for our participants. They're welcome to call us at any time if they have any questions about anything or if they need assistance with navigating the Safe at Home program when they get in.
I just thought of something. We're talking about packages will not be forwarded. What about those packages that do come through the United States mail, maybe smaller packages or whatever? Those will not be forwarded?
Well, it depends. What our statute says is that we do not forward any packages that are larger than a 10 by 13 envelope and more than 3/4 of an inch thick. That's what the United States Postal Service cutoff is for a package. But with that said, I do forward packages from time to time. Like if I get a 10-care recertification packet that's going to be bigger than that, it's from a state or local government agency, I will forward it to them. I get legal documents that are bigger than that, I will forward it to them. If I get something that feels like a pair of jeans and it says Amazon on it, that's going to be a different situation because at that point, that's something that we clearly don't accept and we clearly don't forward. So I'm just going to have them reroute that package for the participant.
What about junk mail?
We shred all junk mail. Yeah.
Oh,
So
well, bless you.
Yeah, you're not going to get your Bed Bath & Beyond circulars. We're not going to be sending those. When I am sorting the mail, I'm looking for sorting first-class mail from what's considered standard mail. The United States Postal Service marks everything as standard mail that's junk mail. So those Bed Bath & Beyond circulars and your Valvoline instant oil change coupons, all of that kind of stuff, magazines, those sorts of things. We don't forward any of that. It all just gets shredded. But with that said, I do personally see every piece of mail that comes through this program. And if I see something that even remotely looks questionable, I will forward it to you, even if it's standard mail. So for example, TennCare sends out all of their notifications as standard mail, not as first class mail. So that's technically junk mail, but I forward those because I have the discretion to look at each individual piece of mail and say, okay, well, technically this is standard mail, but I feel like I'm unsure about this, so I'm going to go ahead and forward it. We always err on the side of caution in forwarding mail to make sure that they're getting it, even if it's not something that they need.
You have to be handling hundreds of pieces of mail a day?
Hundreds
Hundreds
of pieces of mail.
And you're doing this by yourself?
For the most part, yeah.
If I'm in the program and someone's sending me a letter,
yes,
and do you take it and put it into another little, maybe larger envelope?
Yeah.
Put it in postage on it and send it out?
That's exactly what happens. Yeah. If you send a letter to yourself or if somebody sends a letter to you, that mail is going to come across my desk. I'm going to make a determination as to whether or not that's something that needs to be forwarded or if it just needs to go into the junk mail pile. I'm then going to stick that in an envelope that has the Safe at Home credentials on it, and then I'm going to forward that to the participant at their confidential address. And mail moves through the program very quickly. When I pick up mail at the Armory and take it to my office for sorting, it leaves my office the same day.
Almost always, unless you're sick or something?
Yeah, it always leaves my office the same day.
Well, how does a person apply to the program?
So if someone wants to apply for the program, typically what we will do is I will connect them with a partnering agency in the community where they live. I do not want victims to have to drive to Nashville to fill out a Safe at Home application. So if somebody calls me from Cumberland County and says that they're interested in Safe at Home, I'm going to say, great, here's 3 organizations that I have in your area where you can go and fill out a Safe at Home application, decide who you're comfortable working with, let them know that you need to do a Safe at Home application. They'll set up an appointment to do that. The partnering agency will complete the application. They will attach proof of victim status and proof of Tennessee residency. That partnering agency will then send that application to me. I will vet that application and determine if it can be approved or not. If I receive a fully completed application with everything that I need to approve that application, it will be approved within 24 hours.
The intermediary, they're called application assistants.
They are.
I'm one because of the training. If they're not going to email you and say, hey, Ms. Scruggs, how do I apply to this program? Is there another way for them to find application assistance?
They can go to our website, safeathometn.com. is our vanity URL. We do have a government address, but it's easier to remember the vanity one, safeathometn.com. We do have a button that says information for applicants on it, information for application assistance as well. We have a list of partnering agencies by county listed on our website. They can go there and just pull any of those names and call one of those organizations directly. or they can call me and I can have a conversation with them as to whether or not this program is appropriate for them before they make that appointment with a partnering agency. I do speak with people from time to time who don't qualify for this program, and I tell them that. I'm like, this program is not going to work for you. When you go to move, give me a call back. If they do qualify for the program, they can reach out directly to a partnering agency, or I can connect them with the partnering agency. Most of my partnering agencies have 2 or 3 application assistants that I've trained to do these applications that will set up an appointment with them and step them through that process and then submit the application to our program. One of the reasons why we want application assistants involved in this process is because you mentioned earlier that Safe at Home is very narrow in scope. We only do this one thing. I want to direct victims to the partnering agencies within their counties that also provide those wraparound services that we don't provide. So if you need a safety plan, do you know who in your community does that? If you need assistance with, getting any other benefits or safety, housing or anything like that, you can work with those partnering agencies within your community to get those additional resources. And then I'll just be walking alongside that partnering agency to make sure you're getting your address confidentiality at the same time.
You mentioned failing to qualify. People might contact you and they fail to qualify. It sounds like it's based perhaps more on they've already put their address out there.
Yeah.
I cannot protect it than it is because of what they come to you for, the reason they come to you for, like a safety concern.
Yeah, denying someone for being a victim is not my concern because people are going to be able to prove the majority of the time that they're dealing with these issues. The denials are going to be coming in when somebody is at an address that's already a matter of public record and we can't protect it, and I can literally Google them and see where they live. This program is not going to work for them. So I will communicate with them at that time to just keep my information, and if they feel like their situation gets to a point to where they are going to be relocating, contact me back, and at that point we can do an application for them and get them into the program.
I think you touched on this already or said it outright, is that it only takes, there's probably less than a 24-hour turnaround once someone gets to you and you notify them whether they're in the program or not. Is that about right? About 24 hours or less than that?
Yeah, it's a very quick process because I'm only looking at 2 things. Where are they and are they a victim? If those 2 things have been established, my goal is to get them into the program as quickly as possible because they can't do anything until they get this address. They can't enroll their kids in school. They can't get their driver's license. We want to make sure that they have their Safe at Home credentials as quickly as possible so that they can start receiving those state and local government benefits that they need. If there is anything at all deficient within their application, I'm going to contact that application assistant, not that victim. And I'm going to say, you need to correct these issues and then resubmit the application to me so that we can get it approved.
How are applicants notified whether they've been accepted or not? It's by email, right?
It is. The first communication they're going to get from my office is going to be an email to the victim that says, welcome to Safe at Home. Here's your Safe at Home ID number. Here's the substitute address that you are now allowed to use. I'm going to copy the application assistant on that so that they know that it's been approved. There's no confidential information in that email. Everything that's in that email is a matter of public information as far as what they're going to be giving out to people. I also attach a digital copy of our participation packet to that email, which is like a name change form and a copy of our handbook, school registration forms, those sorts of things, so that they have all of those things in a digital format. I'm then also going to physically mail them a participation packet that has a Safe at Home ID card and a letter of participation and some additional information about navigating our program once they are in the program. Usually within an hour of me sending that initial email, I'll get a call from that participant who just says, hey, I have questions. And I'm like, okay, let's hit the ground running right now. And at that point, when someone first gets into the program, there's usually, for about the first 30 days, there's a flurry of activity where we're saying, okay, let's get your driver's license changed. And have you notified all state and local government agencies that you're in this program? And are the schools aware what's going on with the kids? And we're having all of these conversations about getting everything switched over to that substitute address. Once they get that done, everything just goes on to autopilot. I have people who've been in this program for 5 years that I never talk to because they got everything set up. Their mail moves through smoothly. Everything goes exactly the way that it should, and I never really hear from them. I have other participants in the program that I talk to on a weekly basis about what's going on with them because they're moving a lot or something. So it just depends on that specific participant and what their needs are.
When you send out these emails, there's nothing confidential in them. And that's important because if those emails are being monitored by the abuser, the stalker, whoever, nothing's being given away.
No.
We don't know we don't always know who's monitoring the emails.
Yeah, we never give out any confidential information of our participants unless we are being compelled by a court order to do so.
If I'm the abuser and I happen to be monitoring that email and the survivor, whoever's doesn't know that, all I know is that, hey, this address that this person's getting is not going to be their address.
Yeah,
so
the only
again,
information that they're going to have at that point is that this person has been issued a substitute address and their ID number. That's it. That's all they're going to have. We don't communicate anything via email that's confidential. I don't even communicate anything confidential via phone calls. I have participants call me and say, hey, I just want to, make sure you have my correct address on file. I'm like, yep. It's based on what's on the form. Even if I recognize the participant's voice, I still don't communicate any information.
There's no information going out.
Yeah, there's no information going out of our program at all. So they don't have to worry about any confidentiality issues with our program.
In the first weeks or months after you're in this program, you get the emails.
Yeah.
And you're in it. And is there anything else that happens in those first few weeks of sort of the initiation, or you just start receiving your mail and you're good to go?
Well, yeah, they just have to start using that address like they live there. And I'm going to be getting communication if there are minors in the program from the schools to make sure that zoning is proper and things like that. Because I become the go-between between them and all state and local government agencies. If somebody's enrolling their children in school, for example, for a normal person walking in, you would have to provide proof of residency. For Safe at Home participants, you don't have to do that. The school calls me, I look up the confidential address, and I say, yes, these children are at the proper school for zoning purposes. Please enroll them, but you can't have their address. So I'm doing that for all of my participants once they get into the program. And then I'm also communicating with other state and local government agencies for county-specific services like WIC and SNAP benefits and car registration and those sorts of things to verify for those entities that that person lives within the area to receive that service without giving out their confidential information to do so. Even something as simple as a library card. I'll have libraries call me and say, this person is applying for a card. Can you please confirm for me that they live within our library district? And I will have to look up their confidential address and make sure that that's an appropriate thing for them to receive at that time. So all of that's happening typically within about the first 30 days, but changes are being made all throughout their participation in the program depending on what their life circumstances are, children changing schools and those sorts of things. They're welcome to call us at any time if they need assistance with that.
I would like to thank Stacy Scruggs for talking about the Safe at Home program today. In our next episode of Talking DV, Stacy and I will continue to talk about the Safe at Home program, including co-parenting while in the Safe at Home program, how to use the Safe at Home program as part of an overall strategy to stay safe, and also who can become an applicant assistant. In other words, who can help people apply to the Safe at Home program. All of that will be in the next episode of Talking DV. Thank you for listening to Talking DV, a podcast that focuses on providing you with practical information on how to leave an abusive relationship. I'm your host, Dean Hinton, encouraging you to seek legal counsel for your specific case. If you cannot afford an attorney, contact your local legal aid office. Many legal aid offices often offer free legal clinics where you can speak to an attorney face-to-face about your specific legal problem. There's no reason to give up hope.